Now, if I was a fan, what I would encourage them to do, go out to the parking lot. Hide. You wait for the referee to come out there, get into his little car, and you follow him home. You tweet his address, and you let the good people take matters in their own hands.
Obviously, don't go and do that, please.
Hey, you do whatever you like.
We can't condone anything of the sort.
No, we can't live!
Alrighty, hello and welcome to the CREEDCAST. This is the review, the weekly review, and unfortunately, we're having to rip the band-aid off, discussing our first loss together on the podcast. Your Port Adelaide Footy Club went down, losing 13 goals, 11-89 to Melbourne's 15 goals, 6-96. Seventh on the ladder now, which the ladder's a little bit jumbly at the moment. Not that hard to understand, despite what some people seem to be struggling with. The opening round and the buys and all that, but it's just like any other sport that deals with fixture mix-ups like that. It's a loss that raised a million kind of questions, and if you look through our responses to our question on Twitter about getting thoughts on the game, there was a million different answers there as well, or answers / frustration / wishes, sacrifices to some deities to try to get things happening that people want, but ultimately we're here to try to dissect it in a more level-headed way, while without getting too into the weeds. Jamie, you were there. It was a fun game. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Hi, Dave, and hi everyone. It was an emotional weekend, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was there. I was there with a group of friends and my usual family who go every home game. And it was a beautiful night. Weather-wise, you couldn't argue with anything really. The setup was perfect. It was a good crowd and a good game of football ultimately. But disappointing to have to break down a loss this early in the season. But yeah, we'll get our way through it, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. It is a loss that is fascinating to do. I guess you'd like to go through a season undefeated and not have to do it. But if you're going to do it, it's dissecting. I've done it a few times on my own, and doing the 12-goal losses is kind of like, well, we fucking sucked. So what do you want me to say? Everything sucked. Everything was bad. There's nothing really.
It's like the opposite of the Lego Movie song.
Yeah.
Everything is not awesome.
Everything fucking sucks. And we're living in a nightmare.
Yeah.
But yeah,
this one's a little bit different though, I feel.
It's a fascinating one to look at, because when you look at the, and it's been talked about ad nauseum, but we're going to do it again. If you listen to the podcast, then that's why you're here. But yeah, there's
you're a glutton for punishment, we are.
Yeah. I was going to say something inappropriate, but it's too early on the pod for that. We got our monthly eroticism out last week with Charlie's pecs.
Yeah.
But statistically, we were on top in so many different areas. But then, the eye test at times we looked pretty average. But then, we had our little runs, and then obviously, I think, unfortunately, it does keep coming up, and it does deserve to be talked about a little bit. The goal kicking was a defining factor in this one, unfortunately. Melbourne, and it's as you just mentioned, being there, it was a game that reasonable conditions. And Melbourne seemed to be able to dob them from everywhere. 45 degrees, 50, decent angles. Bailey Fritsch with that kind of clincher was a really good example of that. And a few just
in pockets and junction of the 50-meter line.
Yeah.
And the boundary. Just some real low expectation shots, but nailed with precision.
Mm-hmm. And quite confidence as well. You could just see they kind of looked pretty happy to be, just getting the opportunities, because they were kind of relying on a counter-attacking plan to absorb a lot of our pressure down that we were putting in our forward line, because we were getting, I think we were plus 21 on 4 to 50 entries by the end of the game. So they were having to deal with a lot of pressure and absorb a lot from us, and then rebound down back and take, make use of limited opportunities by comparison to ours. And they did it really well. Whereas by comparison to us, there was a few, I was watching back the replay today, and I really looked at that and I've liked what Soldo's done in his early career here. He got, Gawn had
Mhm.
a day out, but, Soldo battled the way as best as he could.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and I feel like we could have maybe put a bit more pressure on Gawn around the ground like we did last year. Then we kind of let
Done
him
it a
have his
few
way.
times.
Yeah, kind of let him have his way this time, which was unfortunate. But that Soldo shot that kind of seemed to start well, but it just faded, kept on fading.
Yeah, it did.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Watching it on the replay,
yeah,
it was like that looked so good for so long.
and then it
And
just
then what did it do?
really
Hit the
slowed.
post? Did
No,
it?
it just faded right.
Made it
I
miss
don't.
completely. Yeah,
Yeah. It might have been
yeah.
probably not too far away from the post, but
No,
it did just
considering its
fade.
original trajectory. Yeah.
Yeah. And I looked at that and thought, geez, if we'd, got that one in, that would have opened up a 4-goal buffer at the start. And, and I think Melbourne probably had it in to make some runs back at us, but it just felt like that was a
Yeah.
little bit of you can kind of
Mhm.
put a
Had
line
that feel to it, yeah.
yeah, you can put a line right there in the game because after that they went down and got their first one pretty quickly and then bounced back and it was tied up and then it stayed that way for the rest of the game. There wasn't any team that got out to more than 17, 18 points. I think we got close to it, maybe 15 points
Yeah.
towards the end of the third quarter, but no one ever got it. So it felt like that was if Soldo had knocked that one
It was
through.
a
But
true arm wrestle, really.
yeah. But unfortunately, it was again at opportunities. If you look at the expected score on this one, which I'm glad you brought that account to my because I'm fascinated with it now.
It seems to be popping up in a few different outlets or avenues that
I've
I've noticed. Even
talking.
I think
Coaches are
even
talking
Ken
about it.
himself. Yeah.
But the expected score on this one, I think we were. I've just got it here. We were expected score of 99.1. We scored 80. It says scored 88. We scored 89 actually, but
Yeah.
and then Melbourne were 96 from expected score of 65. So just an
That's
incredible
crazy. Yeah.
discrepancy there. And when you look at, I was actually looking at the chart. And when I put this on YouTube, if you do, by the way, the podcast is on YouTube now. It sometimes gets uploaded a little bit later than the audio one does because it takes a bit of time to upload, and the internet here just likes to really, really take its time nurturing it through to the YouTubes. It's a polite way of me saying I just get frustrated with how long it takes, but that is what it is. But if you like to watch on YouTube, it'll be up within a day of the audio being up. I'm trying to kind of balance that out a little bit better, but I will overlay the expected score on the video at this point if you want to have a look at it. But otherwise, just go to I think it's AFLX score on Twitter is the account.
Yeah, something like that.
I'll put it in the show notes on the audio as well. So I'll put the link their Twitter handle in there as well. So you can have a look at it. But yeah, if you look at the expected score for us, or the chart is what I find really fascinating where the shots are coming from because Melbourne's were really a lot more tightly grouped in that forward 50 arc, whereas ours were you could kind of tell where we were struggling to with I guess the criticism that has some credence to it. Like it's not as cut and dry as what some people on Twitter would like to say, but the bombing in forward, ours is a little bit more scattergun approach, whereas you'd tell Melbourne and watching the replay back, Melbourne were really putting their eyes down, and despite maybe not getting us on the counter as much, because we were kind of between the lines, it was a real battle with the midfield groups. There was some stop and start in the middle, and therefore Melbourne had to really find their targets, but they still managed to find targets in the forward 50, and just that guys were finding space and in good opportune spots for kicking for goal and clunking them. And yeah, how did it feel being there at the game compared to, because we, obviously I was watching on TV and have my prism from that, but I don't know how it felt for you at the game, how the game looked to you as well. I'll let you have some space to kind of see how it looked. I assume it was through the little bit of amber goggles, but sometimes that's
an understatement.
That can help as well at times. I'll give you the floor for a little bit on the ground.
No, thank you. No, it was mostly viewed through delirium. A light lunch and old friends coming to town to visit for the weekend is a perfect recipe for disaster at the best of times. But we're north of 30, so largely you've got to behave yourself. But yeah, so it did actually help. But as well as that, one of my close friends is a diehard Melbourne supporter, so we always kind of view each other's teams and clashes in. It's probably one of few times where you can kind of take your teal-colored glasses off, and I suppose in his regard, take your royal blue or red colored glasses off and just view it a bit more objectively and pragmatically. I expected it to be a arm wrestle. I said last week that I expected it to be under although I predicted a victory for Port, I was expecting it to be under 10 points anyway. And unfortunately, it was Melbourne who got away and took their opportunities. They were precise and they punished us when they needed to. They did it in quite a professional fashion too, where we generated a lot of play and a lot of inside 50s and whatnot. To put it in perspective, we allowed Melbourne less inside 50s than the Bulldogs offered West Coast yesterday. So, like, you know, when you marry that up with, like you said, the expected score, and I don't want to get as much as I like it. It's an interesting piece of information. It's don't want to get hung up on it too much because at the end of the day, expectation is one thing, but execution is another, and they executed. So, yeah, and then when you do lose a game by 7 points, although that you've dominated a lot of key statistical criteria, it is what it is. Like, you know, we failed our first test last year and we ended up pretty well by the end of the year and also in 2020. It reminded me a little bit actually of the St Kilda game in 2020 when they came to town. We were on a good run to start the season. And they just shot the lights out as well with their accuracy at goal. And we didn't take as many opportunities as we should have. We paid for it. And yeah, there was similar type chatter at that point of the year. And then we finished on top of the ladder anyway. So, like, yeah, I would have loved a win. I think we deserve to. So I spent 3 quarters on the hill. Again, recipe for disaster, and then decided to sit with my family in the stands with a bottle of water in my.
Go sit with your family after you've sunk like a sailor's
They're
drinking
right.
night's worth of piss. Yeah,
yeah. Bay 535 in the 3rd tier is quite parochial anyway, so I was only a little bit extra in comparison to normal. But I got pretty passionate. And yeah. Something that just try and keep few and far between anyway, but I forget where I was going with that digression.
Yeah, I kind of derailed that by
but look, props to Melbourne. They played a good game. When you're splitting hairs over when you're critiquing a 7-point loss, you probably are splitting hairs, and there's not that much to fix. You just don't want it to become a trend because that stereotype is already hanging over our head. Although I think that we've fixed, or not fixed, but we've competed a lot better against other top 8 teams I think in the last 12 to 18 months, although people who watched First Crack last night would have seen the stat that they put up, which wasn't as akin to what I'm saying. We failed our first test, like I said, but we 100% have to pass the next one when it comes, and we'll obviously talk about Essendon a bit later. But yeah, I'm not as worried about Essendon as I was Melbourne, and we factored this in a little bit with our preseason chat. So it's a loss that we knew was possible. Just unfortunate that it actually came to fruition, especially how the game played out.
Yeah, and I think I said to you, or I might have said to a few people on Twitter when I was just chatting with a few people in the post game and getting some ideas of how people felt about it. And I think I said that it's probably where some of the frustration comes from, is actually knowing that we played reasonably well and kind of had the game in our hands a few times and did what we wanted to do. We restricted Melbourne at times. Obviously, they had a couple of goals scored, which that's one thing that is part of the discussion. Is our goal line clearance work was not Sydney last Lear in Sydney last.
No,
year.
it was
the
polar
complete
opposite.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Sava made himself a bit of a meme on the night, but I think he actually bounced back okay for the rest of the game, considering He's a little bit properly late. I think he was dealing with some cramp from the looks of things because he went off, but then came back on and just looked like he was struggling to move.
That's what it seemed like. But
and he wasn't in the post-game injury report, so I assume it was just cramp.
It looked like he kind of shifted along the ground, like went to take off in one direction and something pinged or tightened up. And but I thought he let two big blemishes kind of overshadow what was a pretty serviceable game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he had that one, and then there was another one that kind of, I think the guy that was playing his fourth game for Melbourne, I forget his name, but he kind of bombed one in from pretty deep, and it kind of just
Caleb Windsor, I think his name is.
I think that's who it was. He kind of had one that bounced on the line and went through because I think it might have been Pickett was kind of shepherding a couple of guys off, but it still was.
It was 2-on-1 on the line. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Thatcher and Burton.
Yeah, so it one of those ones that probably should have been. At least touched on the way through or something like that. So it was one of those games where it felt like a lot was just slightly going wrong. I think we talked about it maybe in the first game as well. And obviously we beat West Coast, but just the bounces of the ball and stuff like that. And this one was really because you're playing such a better opponent. Those things are a little bit more.
The moments matter.
Yeah, those little moments matter, and they just seem to be. We're a little bit fumbly at times. Sometimes a little bit indecisive. I always notice when we're playing one of these games, it gets a little bit in the weeds. Is when we kind of have guys like Boat getting caught holding the ball in the forward 50 because he kind of just, and there was a few. That was probably the most highlight moment that kind of highlights what I'm talking about in the sense of guys just being a little bit indecisive and end up getting caught with the ball. Even if it doesn't end up being holding the ball, they just end up making a rushed handball out and it gets turned over in the middle. There was a lot of just indecision, which is part and parcel of the game. It's a little bit locked up in the middle of the ground.
High pressure game, yeah.
Yeah, high pressure game. And it's not like, looking at the stats after the game, it's not like Petrarca and Oliver had stellar games either. It was just a real tough game for the midfields to get on top of each other. Rosie and Butters were quite early in the first half. Boak was our leading disposal getter, I think, at halftime. With 17, and I was really impressed with Boak and game 3-5-1, kind of being one of the lone soldiers early, alongside Willem Drew. I think I called him a metronome last week, and that continues this week as well.
Just keeps ticking along.
Yeah, but it just was one of those games that you couldn't get clean and a complete, kind of reversal from last year where it was like, Zach Butters' masterclass and Rosie was pretty close to him in that one as well. It just was one of those games that wasn't pretty in that sense, but we just seem to have a few and this is eye test stuff. It's not that I've, it's just my view of it, and it is with teal colored glasses because maybe Melbourne fans were watching and thinking they were a bit fumbly and stuff as well. But you always notice more than you do others. But it just felt like in those little moments, and obviously goal kicking we've already touched on, but just in a few little moments we were just a little bit fumbly and indecisive, and unfortunately Melbourne just had the game go the way they wanted it to. Lever was intercept marking frustratingly well. Just seemed to,
in the end. I thought he started a bit wayward, and we capitalized.
Oh yeah,
but he definitely finished the game a lot stronger than he started, and the ball was like a magnet to him, probably with some inferior inside 50 kicking.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what the frustration was for some as well, is because we couldn't get the on top in the midfield to get those really good inside 50 entries, that the ones we want where their eyes are down, they're kind of having to kick from almost a center square rather than finding their way forward a little bit and really getting their eyes down stuff. And it's one of those games that I had to look at last year's stats again. Horn Francis and Pal Pepper had a pretty good influence last year, and they were both missing in this one. And it's not, you can only do what you can because they were missing Stephen May as well, so it's not like they weren't missing players, but it just felt like one of those games that we really, the first time this year, I guess it makes sense playing a pretty good opponent, that I really missed Sam Powell-Pepper out there.
100%.
And obviously the class of Jason Horn-Francis speaks for itself, so yeah.
I think that's where we're missing Sam Powell-Pepper. That's where they want Frankie Evans to lift. That's why he is currently our 24th, 25th best player at the moment. Because while he's got a bag of goals in him, just Sam Powell-Pepper is just another level that starts our defense from the forward line, and then puts it on the scoreboard as well. So
Yeah.
I did think on the night and post that it's funny to say in his third year, but we were missing a bit of Horn Francis, maybe particularly late, some of his entry work inside 50. What was it, the stat he got last year? I don't know if that lasted the whole year, but he was one of the better kicks or disposals inside 50 where
It was like
teammate retains it.
It was like 75% efficiency, like, so 3 out of every 4
Yeah.
kicks were
Was
like,
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know
I
if
remember he was up there.
I don't know if it lasted the year, but yeah, you bring it up. It was at some point during the year that it got brought up in kind of the Twitter discussion. That he was running it really. And I assume it continued at a similar pace throughout the year. Maybe when we had a little losing streak again, but yeah, it was, that kind of that little bit, and it's just that alongside Butters and Rosie, and just the mix wasn't. You could tell the mix being different from last year, and
I thought Wines and Drew and Boca, particularly in the first half, had a lot of heavy lifting to do for portions of it. I think if we won, we would be congratulating a good even spread of performers. But we're not. So
exactly.
some of those more minor details stand out, because I think it depends what you want to look at. You could make your decision on what changed the result. Goal kicking is one, obviously. Poor defensive efforts, like you said, is another one. And obviously the elephant in the room is that, unfortunately, whether they were there or not due to ill discipline or a favourable call, they benefited from some goals from umpiring decisions. Port fans will want that brought up in some capacity, but like I said, it depends where you want to. With a 7-point, with a close loss, it just depends where your mind's at, where you want to look. It's so small, and because I mean, quite honestly, at the end, even in the fourth quarter, while I was going bananas in the stands and trying to wheel my team over the line from 3 tiers up, like I said to the people around me, even like it's a bloody good game of football, and then I wrote it on Twitter afterwards, didn't I? I was quite pissed off. Like in the same breath, obviously not to take the 4 points home, but just acknowledge that it was a game of football. Like, it's defined by moments, and we just didn't take the ones that would have put it over the line, and put those umpiring decisions out of being a contributing factor.
And that's what I always like to acknowledge as well, as like whenever, because I had, as usual, when you run an account like that, you always get the few fans that you realize once you click on their account they're a Crows fan or a Melbourne fan or whatever, that a few popped in there and just like a few
poking
people
the beast.
A few people did the typical Port flog, just blaming the umpires, and it's always the brevity of Twitter makes
Every
it
club,
very difficult.
You're not a football fan unless you're a little bit irate, and I thought the game was overall umpired fairly well. It's just unfortunate that there was some blemishes that stood out on our side of the ledger from our highly biased viewpoints. It
was more that it was some of the ones that just you kind of saw a little bit of leniency at times, and then it felt like the whistle blew really quickly at other times. It was just very uneven for me when I was watching it. It was how I viewed it. Obviously, again, it's very with a very biased lens, which I acknowledge, and that's why
100%.
In the tweet. I think I even said like, unfortunately, like we made our own mistakes. Like it was actually in the tweet that I said it wasn't just the umpires, but then people respond and latch onto one thing. But because and I've always held that view. Most of the time, there's certain games in different sports you can really, sometimes it's very egregious. I think we've talked off here before about the Liverpool offside fiasco earlier, in which anyone that follows Premier League, even at
or the studs in McAllister's chest,
stuff like that's just really. But this was just decisions that just went a little bit one way at times, and then and just felt a little bit uneven. But unfortunately, in a game like this, there wasn't anything overly. If we played perfectly and then we got boned by the umpires, referees, I interchange, then it would be something different. But it was the honest factor is that we did blow some chances as well. So it's not all on one thing. Yes, the umpires contributed, but also a goal kicking contributed. But then also Melbourne being really clinical contributed as well. It's just there's never ever just one factor in these things, and that's what I think you and I is good. We have a similar mindset to it because there is so many different things. Because after a little fast start, Melbourne kind of settled in, and that's credit to them that they've just got that experience.
Yeah, they did.
To be
They did that well
because they just kind of went, okay, we'll take a breath here, and maybe they thought similar to me when Soldo missed that goal. They thought, all right, had a little let off here, like let's lock in now and get forward. And like I said, it wasn't the midfield stuff. I did make a note because I was really interested to see, just having seen how well the game last year went for Butters and Rosie and co. And I noted Butters in particular. Probably, Butters finished the game reasonably strong, and he was battling away the whole game as well. It's nothing against him. But
not a highlight for him for sure.
No,
but
no,
didn't give up.
Yeah, exactly. But I had a look at the meters gained last year just as a stack. I looked at Butters for this game. He had 287. Last year he had 581. Rosie had 408 in this one. Last year he had 756.
Jesus.
And Dan Houston had, you think that 756 is good. Houston had 483 in this one, which was pretty good for this game overall.
Mm-hmm.
He had 815 last year. So between them, they had 2,000 meters gained basically last year in the game. And this one, they barely, about 1,100. So that kind of, and that's a very binary stat. It's not like there's never a story. But I think to extrapolate that out into how it felt for me watching the eye test was how much more of this game was a battle inside in between the arcs a little bit more. We weren't getting a lot of there was some really good, it wasn't really attacking flair, I guess, to this game. The excitement. This was an equally exciting game for different reasons than the one was last year. There was a lot more in the trenches, and the disposal wasn't as clean at times. And it went both ways because last year there was a lot more. You could have a look at had similar story for the likes of Petrarca and Oliver, and they had decent games in this one, kind of like Butters and Rosie, but not highlight real kind of stuff similar to ours. So it was both ways. Melbourne were just a little bit more clinical when it mattered, and goal kicking was certainly a part of it. But I found it really interesting looking at that because just you can read some of the stats, and that those meters gained in isolation doesn't mean much, but I think when I look at the games, the eye test both ways, it just kind of matches up with how it felt watching it as well. And that's something that I guess we've got to acknowledge as well as a lot of people's frustration is with the game plan, like because we have seen this story before, and again, I'm not going to get into the weeds of how extreme some people get with their ideas to change things, but it is a valid criticism. The ones that have a level head about it, it is a valid criticism that this is something that whenever we dominate a game like this, there is a few instances where we find a way to lose when we have a plus 15 or plus 20 inside 50 advantage. And the forward line, if Dixon I think kicked 1 goal 2. If he 2 goals 1 helps a little bit, but still didn't probably get enough of he was clunking marks here and there. He was clunking a few in midfield.
I think he led the contested mark stat.
Yeah,
as you would expect.
That one at the end of the first quarter, he kind of just puts his arms up and it just sticks there like he's wearing.
Reaches for the heavens.
Yeah,
like Jake Lever didn't look impressed at all, which was great.
Yeah, we all like seeing that's one. I think that's one moment that Crows fans and Port fans might have been like married up in
rejoicing.
They're rejoicing of it. Yeah, overall, like Marshall, and a caveat with the fact that Todd went off with a dislocated finger early in the game and got it.
He did, yeah. I think Aaron said he dislocated it twice or something.
Did he? Oh, geez.
I don't know if she was framing it as he's done it once this week and once recently, or something. Okay. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't catch it properly. But I believe that's what I heard.
Okay.
Once is bad enough.
I can only assume.
Twice,
I don't think I've done it before. I've had a few, like little weird injuries on the farm, but I never properly popped out. I've got like a dislocated double jointed thumb that just popped in and out anyway. So it's just. But that's not football related.
I actually dislocated my shoulder.
Yeah.
Too many times.
That one looks.
It's a weird feeling.
that looks like a painful one. It's particularly in the movies when they always do the tough guy thing where they just go up to
Yeah.
the wall and pop it back in. But
I think it was only ever partial because I never had to get anyone else to put it back in. I just
okay,
kind of needed to rest it against something and it slid
push.
back in on its own.
So you did the tough
Just
guy thing.
relax. Just relax. Yeah. And the body will do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not fun. Like he would have got an injection or something like that. And I think while he didn't have a lot of chances himself, Melbourne did well to cut off. He's a very smart footballer. He uses leading lanes and a good forward craft to get a lot of his marks and shots at goal. But I think they defended him pretty well, blocking off that space, and he took advantage of what was his only opportunity at goal. I'm not sure if he had another shot.
He didn't, because that was the one towards the end of the third quarter. There was he took a mark on the boundary earlier, I think somewhere in the first half. Might have been the second quarter, and it was pretty close to 50 meters out in the pocket there. And I think it kind of just faded across the front of goal, and I don't think it even went for a point. Like, and maybe he was kind of doing a sneaky setup thing, and it might have been a setup maybe. But yeah, he did have a scoring opportunity, one that I've seen him kick goals from there before, so it's one of those spots he could have. But yeah, I guess that's probably the big question that comes out of this game as well. Is just like how. So this is a very good videotape for the club, but then how do they go forward?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
that is the thing. Is like we had two forward lines operating in the same conditions, obviously, and Melbourne's forward line over the last couple of years has actually been the one that's often been the question mark over their premiership credentials. Is like, have they got their forward line mix right with and Ben Brown coming in, but then he didn't play the full. I don't think he even played the full year when they won the premiership. He played in the premiership, but
yeah,
they've often been playing with their forward mix.
He's been in and out the whole time he's been at Melbourne.
Yeah,
but he's a seasoned forward and a very accurate one. So you like to keep it out of his hands around 50 and within.
Every time he took a mark, I was like, well, he's going to fucking kick this. And I think I don't know. I haven't looked at his stats, but I assume he kicked everyone he went for, to be honest. I don't remember him missing. So
yeah,
he only had
it might have been one that didn't. But yeah, him and Fritsch, it would be such a pleasure being a Melbourne fan, seeing the ball in their hands, kicking for goal, because they're two of the most accurate kicks in the competition.
And even Gawn just popping up with one of his trademark kind of long ones that he kind of does the captain's thing as well. It was fucking frustrating to watch.
He kicks well.
Yeah. And I guess that's probably where the frustration is. Like, we butchered a lot of opportunities going forward with that, obviously the amount of chances we had. I think we had 14 marks inside 50 to their 7 or 8 as well, which was, all the statistical markers were like...
Pick your stat line, yeah.
We even won the contested ball. It was only +2, but we won.
Which is our one wood. Yeah.
So that'll be the interesting thing going forward. And again, that's about, I will say to any, because I know there's a couple of people that listen. Shout out to the great Greek historical figure on Twitter. I told him I'd shout him out, Targs Idamu. I know you like listening to the podcast, you fuckhead. So to acknowledge,
I think he's changed his handle.
Oh no,
unless you've interacted.
Oh no, he's been replying in the last day or two. We've had words. I told him.
Okay.
I told him I'd shout.
So I've been interacting with someone who I thought was.
Or maybe he could have burners
in another burner account. Yeah. It was just it's a profile with no posts and an image of something completely irrelevant. So the less said about that, the better. Really.
But to acknowledge the more like people that do have a more level head for these things and these discussions, that is a frustration that I do understand and agree with. It's the forward structure in these games sometimes just doesn't. And again, though, to acknowledge the other side, Melbourne played it very well. But we've got to just figure out a way to get through that as well. That's what the best
control what you can control. Like Melbourne are always going to be in the game. They've started the year very well after a lot of question marks were raised over them as a team and a club. But when what they do with their momentum, sure, we can defend as well as we can, but modern football, it always plays out like your team is going to capture momentum at various stages. And yeah, what was the biggest run of goals? Like it wasn't high on either side. Like you said, no team got out to higher than 18 points,
Yeah,
or
and I think
thereabouts. So control what you can control,
mm,
and yeah, although we kicked more goals than behinds, the moments stick out because we didn't lose by that much.
and particularly when
And
they kick very, very well accurately.
a few posters, like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. And yeah, I said early in the season that I'll start, up until round 6, anything can happen. So if this is one of the worst performances for the year, I dare say we'll be pretty happy overall. And it's not the first test that we've failed early in the season before. Just like I said earlier in this episode, don't make it a trend and convert it. And like I think Dixon is getting a lot of criticism for the 2 behinds that he kicked. I think we kicked at least 2 posters, not him, the team, which makes it even more frustrating. That right post, that right behind side, no matter where they are, I don't know if they're trying to account for a crossbreeze at Alberton or whatnot, but we seem to be missing a lot more to the right than to the left if we're missing, which is look a bit at the moment. But yeah, look, someone posted up Dixon's goal kicking stats, and I alluded to it, whether it was last week or the week before, that
mention
early in his Port Adelaide career, he was probably kicking at about 50% conversion. But in more recent years, he's actually been quite reliable as a set shot kicker. And on top of the fact that he has kicked some amazing field goals, like in general play. But in two halves of seasons, what is it? He kicked 23-12 last year, injured for a lot of the year. The year before that, 2022, he only played half the year or whatnot. He kicked 16 goals, 8. Coming off the back of 48 and 24, 34 and 21. So that's a pretty good track record, to be fair. And 100% I'm biased, and he's one of my favorite players. But that perception from early in his Port Adelaide career seems to have stuck with him the whole time, while even in relation to other forwards when he was in contention for the Coleman, I think it was in 2020.
I think
or 2021.
2020, he was his All-Australian year, so
I'm pretty sure he was in the top 3
he was
forwards out of the top 10, like the players going for the Coleman.
It was a shorter year, and then the shorter quarters as well. So
yeah.
What did you say? It was 34-21 or something like that, I think.
34-21 in 2020 and 48-24 in 2021.
Yeah, I remember 2021 him starting off hot as well. Like he had a bag of 5 or 6 in our first home game against Essendon that year. Yeah, he's often, I think, with Port fans and wider AFL fans as well, they just think he's a hack and don't actually give him the respect.
It astounds me.
He's due for a lot of what he does, and I saw a few comments on Twitter as well, even talking about the worth of his place in the side, and I'm just like, no, if he's fit, like he's like a damn good player, and what he does.
No team is dropping a fit Charlie Dixon.
Yeah,
if he's underdone.
Yeah, too late.
Then the club needs to make the right decision at the time. But how many shots on goal has he had? Like, just bringing up those statistics from the past. Like, obviously, we just want to look forward and fix our issues and whatnot. But it gives me confidence that like he's good to turn it around, because nothing in the last 4 and a bit seasons suggests otherwise. Forwards go in and out, like we said, round 1. Todd Marshall and Finlayson kicked 7 behinds for the game, and the next week they kicked 7 goals. So, yeah. While I'd like our forward entries, particularly when we're under immense pressure, because I think our forward 50 entries overall have been a lot healthier recently, opposed to the stereotype that lingers. But it's when we're under real pressure, and look, that might be symptomatic across the whole competition. I'd watch a fair bit of football, but I don't watch everything. But when we're at the highest of her, that's why I mentioned Horn Francis before. It's in those moments that we need to be better. It's that fraction of improvement that is really all we need to make, both in the home and away season and in the fucking finals, if and when we hopefully get there again. Just when the pressure is at its highest, I thought we've done a lot right in the last 12 months in particular in that regard.
Yeah, no, I absolutely
just be better, especially when you've got three damaging tool forwards and a mosquito fleet who, without Sampow Pepper, and then when he eventually comes back in, is pretty dangerous at ground level for multiple reasons. Yeah, just be better. Be better with your forward entries.
Yeah.
Is my Nuffy comment to say. Kick it forward.
Yeah, kick it forward.
But better.
Kick it. Start booing when they go backwards, even though you don't understand that it's a switch of play and it works.
And every kick that comes after a backwards kick is generally a forward kick.
Yeah, exactly. God, I love AFL.
So you immediately get your wish after
exactly.
those people after a backwards kick.
Yeah.
Pretty much every time it goes forward after that.
It's a classic. It's a move that happens in all games of football that work that way. Like soccer, there's always a switch of play pass that goes backwards, but it usually ends up being a pretty good move going forward. I to finish off your point there, because I do agree. I think last year we saw a significant improvement in general when we were out playing at our best and kind of backing ourselves in. And that's where Rosie first, when he had that great finish to 2021 that got him that his first All-Australian blazer, and then last year when Butters really got into the midfield mix as well, their eyes down stuff, and in particular when they get kind of forward of the centre circle and can actually put the eyes down and lace a good kick into the deep inside the 50 rather than trying to, because that's probably what happened a little bit in this game, was like we were either bombing it deep in 50 or finding targets towards around the arc, and we just weren't finding good scoring opportunities. By comparison, Melbourne were actually really eyes down finding targets. They had to work hard for it and weren't getting as many opportunities, but that's where they excelled. But in general, when we've been playing at our best, and often when Horn Francis has been on the side and then Pow Peppers in that forward mix, is when things have been humming along a lot better. We just didn't have the forward 50 didn't quite work right in this game, and this is something that happens in all sports. Sometimes you just have just things don't click right, and a good opposition frustrates you as well. You've seen different sports. If you watch a Golden State Warriors game when they're at their absolute best in the last 6 to 8 years, there was games where Steph and Clay were just frustrated, and they couldn't. And it's not like the defense was doing anything special. It's just that they just were having a slightly off night, weren't quite in sync positional wise, and that's kind of what it felt like watching Port a little bit on the weekend too.
Well, and just to go, sorry to cut in, but just to go back on my a comment that I made in last week's pod about Richmond, and you were along the same lines with your assessment, is that even though they were low on the ladder at the time, we expected them, and I said that they'd probably beat teams that you don't expect them to, and it was only a day after our game, Richmond beat Sydney, where Sydney would have been favourites even away, playing in Melbourne. And say Sydney came up against Port Adelaide on Saturday, a lot of people would have been tipping Sydney if that was the matchup this round. And then they dropped a game. So it's a good temper, and people don't want to hear that. I acknowledge that. People just want to stew in their own madness and go for it. But I'm not going to do that. We need to be better if we're going to go the whole way like we think we can, and we all believe we can, because that's why we all get so passionate about it. But there's not a lot to fix, and I don't think we should jump at shadows either. While there's, like I said, if we won the game, I'd almost guarantee that everyone would be congratulating a good overall team performance. My 5 votes were pretty hard to put together. To be honest, because what do you value, particularly in a loss, when naming your best players? It's just a general question for everyone to think about. But I actually, we'll get to it later, but I actually turned off my fantasy point stat line and changed it for something else. And I'm going to probably go with that because I think it's easy for people to kind of get caught up on that, but it's not a perfect science, although it looks good. Yeah, so
yeah, Kane
it's a bit
Corns
of a
will tell you.
digression, but
Kane Corns
yeah, we'll
will
get to it
have
later.
Kane Corns will have
Yeah.
issues with Nick Martin's. Was it Nick Martin?
Yeah, absolutely. And he has.
His 140 fantasy points this week.
He's already brought up the kick in stat.
Those shouldn't be
that he
disposals.
hates, so yeah, but yeah.
In the weeds of what he said, I
don't know
can kind of see what his point was, but yeah, at the same time, it's just like it is still a kick. So I don't know. It's a tough one, but
yeah. Well, what if you play on, which most people do as well? Like that would still be a kick in before the rule changed. So yeah.
But yeah, no, I do try to click through a few because the AFL website, like you can click different things to show up first and whatever. I click through a few different. I look for different things, and then the AFL, the fantasy thing is like a good way to see an immediate idea of who was best to field. But my votes did not go at all chalk with that. Some did, some
that's
didn't.
That's exactly right.
Like
you said, the eye test comes into it.
yeah. And particularly as Port fans, we kind of look. There's certain things we look for, but I'll explain that more when we get to the votes. I guess probably one of the last things to touch on for the game. I don't know if I want to put too much on it, but just to mention it because it got brought up in the comments a lot. I apologize, I'm not mentioning any particular Twitter user by name, apart from my good buddy earlier. And it's just there was so many comments, so I'm kind of putting them together in my mind and bringing up talking points. But Lockie Jones got brought up a little bit, and obviously he did drop. He had clubs for hands at times, and that was frustrating.
Two-touch player.
Yeah. It was frustrating, and the more because I sit on Twitter as I watch the game a little bit, just kind of out of the corner of my eye, just keeping an eye on what people are saying, and the more I saw the comments and the more I noticed it, I was like, oh damn. But then I did try to push that in my mind and just watch his game on Virtue and try to. It's hard to do, but you have to do it sometimes to try to get it. And his there is some. He does have good sides. Like I don't know what the mix will be this week because there's some people saying drop him for Williams, but then that changes the defensive. That changes the defensive mix a little bit. And there was a couple of moments where his closing speed did close down and make a contest where it was otherwise going to be an easy mark for a Melbourne player, kind of on the half forward, our half back line. He does. Jesus Christ! Like I remember my coaches when I was in minis or whatever. Like because I became a pretty good mark when I was younger, but I was pretty shit to start with, and I had a coach just sit there and just kick me just and like sometimes you didn't know exactly how they were going. They just you kind of did the Kobe thing, get into the gym at 4 a.m. and don't leave until
repetition.
You get 4. Yeah, don't leave until you've sunk 400 shots or whatever the crazy shit Kobe would do. There's a reason he was really good. Maybe that's just what it's get him aside and just kick him a few. I don't know. It's hard to do because match sim stuff in training is very hard to do. But beyond that, he does provide some value to our side. He needs to provide a lot more because those are match and in a close match that helped contribute to some of those fumbly issues that we had. So there has to be some criticism to him, but I'm also trying to not make him a scapegoat as what some people did on Twitter. I think
it was much like a Savas game. The blemishes stood out and it kind of overshadowed what objectively was a pretty good game if you put them to one side.
Mm-hmm.
You can't necessarily put them to one side though because they exist, they happened. I think I've rewatched it a couple of times, the game that is, and I know one of his drop marks on the halfback flank through run of play after it happened ended in I think Jack Viney goal.
Mm-hmm.
And you could argue that, if he'd taken that mark, would that play have unfolded post then? But you could also argue that a bit of play had unfolded after he fumbled it too. So there was a few players who could stop the goal as well.
The old sequence of play.
It rooted from there. But I think he tended to cover those fumbles pretty well. Again, if you're looking at it objectively, but he does kick fairly well under pressure.
Mm.
but yeah, the fact, and because my criticism of him being a two-touch player is more the ground balls, I'd like to look at the
Yes, yeah,
stats on marks because my memory and again bias, probably confirmation bias or whatnot, I think he's generally a pretty good mark. I don't know.
It's not something I thought about as
I don't
much
want to
until.
put my flag in the ground with that, but
Mm,
I don't think it's something that I've necessarily worried about with him
mhm.
before. And then yeah, on Saturday it was just like one after the other. It was
Yeah,
yeah,
did you
like
notice?
earworm type stuff.
Did you notice when he did take a mark, the crowd cheered?
Yeah. I noticed that
I was
today.
like, that's when it's. I was like, I noticed that on the night. I was like, that's when you know it's become a bit of an issue. And like,
Yeah, when you're
look,
getting a
it's
Bronx cheer.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
unfortunate for him too. I do love him as a lad, and I mean, we've said it before. He kind of just has that cult hero look, so it's just like you kind of root for those guys anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think, yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty obvious what he can be. And
mm.
that's what everyone sees
He's got an AFL body,
at the
like he,
front. But
yeah,
then, yeah, unfortunately, some fumbling, yeah, is kind of overshadowing his positive attributes
yeah, exactly.
at the moment. So that I had him in my mind when I said about the club match committee jumping at shadows,
Hmm.
but we'll probably talk about
That's
kind of
what got my
selections, yeah, a
yeah
bit
that's
later.
what got my brain ticking when you said that. I was just like, oh, I should probably bring it up because it did get brought up in the Twitter
No, I'm glad you
stories.
did because
Yeah,
yeah, I've actually chosen someone else for my spotlight opportunities for improvement portion
so
of it. So
so
I'm
have,
glad you brought him up.
so have I. I had him written there as like that's the obvious choice, but I'm going to go somewhere else. So
Yeah, but I
yeah,
like what you said about watching the game in regards to him, but watching everything else that
yeah,
he did
trying
because
to
yeah,
you almost try to because we're report fans, we want to support these players and but also provide construct like you want to be constructively critical and also acknowledge the things that they need to do better and but yeah, I did notice a couple of times as I was watching that he just closed down on some contests that otherwise might have been a little bit easier ball for the Melbourne players. So it is it's kind of like goalkeepers. They can make 10 decent saves, but if they let
yeah,
one
one goal through.
somewhat easy goal through, then they're the villain immediately. And whereas it could have been 11-0 if they just let all of them through. But sometimes you're between a rock and a hard place in that situation. Good segue though. Spotlight. You're first this week. I
Yes, I am.
went back through and watched last. I actually got a little bit more prepared this week, and I think I have it right in my list. So I'll let you go first.
Yeah, it's good with
So
a
yeah,
Saturday game, a bit more preparation time.
yeah, a bit of time to digest and then get into it. So yeah, your positive
Yeah,
spotlight
so
first.
I'll kick off, yeah, obviously with my positive from the game. I just wanted to bring some attention and flowers for DBJ. I
Hmm.
mentioned him a little bit last week for the Richmond game, but as we've spoken about, we're missing a pretty key cog in that forward line in Sam Powell-Pepper.
Hmm.
And I actually think that Darcy Byrne-Jones has lifted to cover as much as he can at the moment. He's, like I said, he seems to be running all over the ground, applying some severe pressure. I think he was up there with pressure acts in this game, and he's being rewarded on the scoreboard as well. He's a bit of a goal sneak and a somewhat reliable kick. I think it was 3 goals, one last week, and then
Hmm.
was it 2 goals this week?
Yeah, two
I'll have
goals
to get the
and
stats.
there might have been a miss in there, but it again wasn't. It's his overall
Yeah, two
accuracy was
goals, one. Yeah. So
yeah.
he's lifting like that, and to juxtapose that with Frankie Evans as well, with my comments earlier, with such a significant player in Sam Pepper and a new leader to the leadership group, uh, everyone needs to lift that extra bit to cover it. And I feel that Darcy Byrne-Jones since round one has done as best a job at lifting his game to impact when he needs to. I think everyone would probably. I would hope that everyone would agree.
Mm.
Just sitting back and kind of thinking about again the small forward role in modern football and his influence in these first 3 rounds. I just wanted to give him credit because he's obviously been a bit of a whipping boy recently since his probably out of the box All Australian year in 2020. It
Mm.
probably surprised a lot of people how well and consistent he played that year, and then was rewarded for it. And then he obviously he set the bar high for himself. But changing positions seems to have refreshed him early days, and now he's done a full preseason in that position, which he looks to be contributing well. And I think a few people at the start of the year probably had a microscope on him. Like, if he doesn't perform with Sam Powell-Pepper being out, could he be on the chopping block? But I don't think he's anywhere near that conversation at the moment. I think he's, as a leader, and now he's relieved of his official duties, perhaps he's getting back to a more confident headspace, and early signs suggest that he's flourishing in that regard. So DBJ's my spotlight for this game.
Yeah, no, I like that. He certainly started the game quite well, and again, we've talked about it before, but the small forward position sometimes can be a little bit of a thankless role at times.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on how the game goes, you're not getting a whole lot of ball. Like, we've had it in the past with guys like obviously Stephen Motlop was a bit hot and cold, both obviously his play, but then also fans' opinions of him. But it often came down to how the game was being played. If he was, if the game's just being played in a certain way, the small forward can sometimes just get lost in. And we did put a spotlight on Rioli last week, and not that he is in either of mine this week, but he did.
No, I thought about him though.
Yeah, I thought about
in regards to that
positive.
chat.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to put him in either.
Oh yeah.
But after watching the game, it just made me think about like your comments last week.
Found his
just
way
on a tent. Yeah. Just on a side note. Yeah.
He found his way into the game as best as he could. So there was a couple of kind of forwards getting in there, and even if he found his way into the game in with a mark that was taken on the other side of the Torrens almost, but incredible.
Just making up for West Coast round one.
Yeah,
I don't think we got a goal out of it anyway.
No, we didn't. He, I can't remember if he kicked it to the. Yeah, it didn't end up. Yeah, kind of karma worked out, I guess, because that was clearly out.
100%. Yeah.
But
I honestly I'm all for tradition to a point, but honestly, like we've joked about on and off air, and I was screaming it at the top of my lungs when Ben Brown dropped the ball in forward 50 and they got a goal at the end of it, again after some general play, just to balance it out. But I was just screaming Bush League at the top of my lungs, and my throat was copping it yesterday as a result. But it is, and I think with out of bounds, it's such a Bush League. It's a traditional interpretation of what is out of bounds. And in our game, it's the ball, but it makes it so unnecessarily hard to adjudicate, because you got to work on 3 axes to figure out, is that ball out of bounds? And honestly, if they said that we wanted to make our out of bounds rule, A, last touch out of bounds, which 100% should be included in the rule set, and B, it's the player that needs to be out of bounds, not the ball. It just makes the umpire's job so much easier, and it makes it it looks second rate to me. We've had how many in 3 rounds of football? Exactly. It's ridiculous.
And I do wonder if there was some inside memo, which I don't know where this would have come from, because it's not like anyone's ever really argued about this. There's a lot more AFL rules that are
they just like to talk about it in the media.
But if they have just said,
wasn't it?
Look, advantage, kind of like the offside rule in soccer, advantage the attacker. If you're not sure, but someone's taking a mark, then just fucking give it to them. Just let us know.
I think it should have been thrown in. Yeah, 100%.
But just let us know, if there is some kind of different way that they're just, because if they're just kind of going, but again, it is one of those things. It's just but at some point, if it does keep being weirdly umpired this way, then at some point there's going to be a goal at the end of a game that someone's snapped it from the boundary, and they've replay shows they're out of bounds, and
but going by what I was saying, Jack Higgins' goal would just have been a goal. His foot wasn't outside the line. Cool, celebrate the goal. That's the future that I did. I don't care if the ball was hovering outside of the line. Like the NBA, like most sports with a boundary line, is the player touching the excluded zone or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a nuance that we, again, among
Yeah.
others, that we carry in this game just for the sake of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, soccer has a similar rule to AFL, but they do any scoring play that happens. Like if they look back and see that it went out of bounds prior to in the same sequence of play, they're going to call it back. So, but AFL doesn't have that level of replay involved, so it's an interesting one. But yeah,
Professionalism.
but yeah. Anyway, I think that tangented off me just saying Rioli had
Absolutely.
kind of one of those games. That
DBJ was the person in
DBJ was where we
question.
started.
Just remind
with,
everyone.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. DBJ's a player I've always liked anyway, and say that probably about every Port player because I get warm and fuzzies about him. But
Yeah, just want to see the best in everyone. So
yeah,
that's
good game, guys, good game.
commendable.
But yeah, DBJ, he's making the most of those opportunities, and very. You can kind of see why they like him so much because he finds himself in the right spaces, and I think that's just good game intelligence that he has. I guess sometimes his execution was what started getting criticised when his form
Off the
waned.
back line, you mean?
Off the back line. Yeah, that's where it kind of went
Yeah.
down. But he was always
Coming after
himself
Jasper Pittard was
Yeah.
removed from our team lists. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good old Jasper. I guess I'll do my positive now anyway.
Sure.
I'm going to start as soon as Jasper Pittard comes up. I was going to start tangenting because that's a whole discussion.
Yeah.
He did some good things
Yeah,
at times
yeah.
too, but then it was frustrating.
Well, that's it.
Anyway,
Yeah, he passed the
yeah.
baton on to DBJ, and yeah, DBJ had an out of the box year, and then
Yeah.
judged accordingly.
Yeah. My positive was and this is, I guess, probably a little bit of a layout, but in game 351, I thought in a first half that was a little bit we were crying out for a little bit from our star, our now captaincy group in Butters and Rosie, who were just a little bit quiet in the first half. I thought Travis Boak really, when you're playing game 351, you're keeping up with that midfield and trying and really, you could tell that he is in game 351 because he wasn't the Travis Boak.
Yeah.
He
You can
wasn't
100% tell he's near the
29-year-old
end.
Travis Boak is just, would have really dominated, but he was finding himself position. He was getting the ball. He was battling hard. And honestly, that head knock that took him out of the game, the game seemed to swing a little bit there. So he was influential right the way through.
That was a real ruck moment on Soldo's behalf. Because I don't know if you noticed, but he actually slipped immediately before he got in the way of Travis Boak.
Yeah.
Like he'd slipped, got up, then got in the way, and took a player out of the game. It was really bad time. It was wrong place, wrong time on both ends. But it was just seeing Soldo come into it beforehand. It's like, ruck moment.
Yeah, as kind of a lanky, like awkward tall guy myself, I not nearly as tall as Soldo, but I just always am very aware of how ungainly I am, and I feel for him in that moment. But yeah, like if Boak hadn't gone out of the game with that head knock, I don't know where that game goes because he felt like he just always felt involved in the game, and he's a guy that's kind of been pushed out of.
Yeah, that leadership you need as the whips are cracking deep in the last quarter.
Exactly. So I wanted to give him just a spotlight, being that he is at this time, and especially in last off season before he signed on, it was like, is he going to be? Are we going to see him play game 350 at Port Adelaide? So now that we've seen,
which is really interesting. Yeah, about the social media uproar when he hadn't signed yet, and rumors were circling.
Mm-hmm.
And in reflection, there was never really an issue.
Yeah, it was just working out the finer details.
He was always going to play 350 and play as much this season as he can.
Yeah, and from the looks of it, what we saw on the weekend, he does have a role to play. Whether it's going to be week in, week out, if we get back to full strength, but he does seem to be in good nick. And at his age, playing good footy as well, and he was really involved in the game, and
still needs to justify his position. Which I agree. I
said selection squeeze is always a good problem to have. It's frustrating at times. It's when you start seeing your favorite players maybe be part of that selection squeeze, but it's a decent problem to have. I wanted to give him flowers because how many more times we do, I don't know. And I thought, it's his milestone game in a way. The fact that
I viewed it as that as well.
Yeah, shout out to the Port fans. I assume you were one of them, clapping on the 10-minute mark there. That was really nice to see, and really cool on the telecast as well. They kind of acknowledged it and what was going on. Which is interesting because I think is it Darcy, the lead commentator, that was mistaking every player. Like
He called McEntee Frankie Evans.
Yeah, and then Jackson
for the
Mead
second
was,
goal we kicked.
I think Jackson Mead was Todd Marshall at one point, which there's a whole. I don't know how you make that mistake, but
I don't even want to touch that. And I don't think they were there commentating either. So it's
that's a
I don't know if the boundary riders let them fill them in with the applause or they just figured it out. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, no, they didn't have a good night otherwise. But I was glad that they kind of, the telecast in of itself just kind of gave a little bit of breathing space at that moment, and you gave the crowd shots and stuff like that. It was good for me being over here and not being able to experience it. I was glad I was able to enjoy it as well. So shout out to the crowd for that. And yeah, like I said, it was kind of felt like his game 350.5 in a way, and that fact we've got to celebrate it finally in that sense. So yeah,
100%.
A spotlight that Travis Spoke has got a role to play, and he's playing it well. It's not the same, not the Travis Spoke we knew 6 years ago, but he's still an absolute champion. So yeah,
it's not the last time he'll be mentioned in this episode. I'll just put that out there as well. So yeah, I agree.
Great minds. Yeah. We'll get to that later. Anyway, just for you and one to watch on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah, so my player who I feel has got a bit of opportunity for improvement. Obviously, we could go for the obvious, the ones that are in talking circles around the internet, like you mentioned Lockie Jones earlier. But again, there was actually some passages of play early that I thought Lockie handled quite well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, if you look at you got to look at the whole game before and some people might not be impressed, and
mm-hmm.
and that's your prerogative as a fan. But I think, and especially because he played not even half a game, maybe half a game last week,
mm-hmm.
he didn't get the opportunity to play out what was appearing like a good game as well. He was playing on Dustin Martin quite well. Excuse me. Against Richmond, but yeah, Corky took him out of the game. So he's getting judged quite harshly at the moment. And we're a top 4 side, so we're going to have a lot of everyone's going to have their selection kind of ideas and philosophies, but he's not my player. To just finish that one off, I've actually selected Bergman, which is I had him in my votes after round 1, and because I thought he fulfilled his role, particularly in round 1, being first game for premiership points. I thought he contributed really well in round 1. However, I don't know if it's a case over the last 2 weeks where he's readjusting to playing on the wing. And sure, he had some good moments, none that stick out humongously to me. But there's also some moments that do kind of linger in my mind where I think that he could have probably gone a bit harder. And again, it's like, I don't expect every player on the field to get 25 disposals. It's just a stupid thought to have. You know, you don't have to get 25 and absolutely fill the stat sheet. A good team is balanced out with role players, and he's on the wing, which is a difficult role because, a bit like small forwards, sometimes you're not going to get rewarded by getting the ball given to you or whatnot. And so keeping that in mind, but there's still some moments that I'd like him to probably attack with a bit more ferocity. I think there was some times during the game where he was corralling, where he could have probably gone at the play with the ball a bit harder and given our defense a bit more time to set up. Or it might not have even gone down there had he applied just a bit more pressure. And on top of that, he hasn't found a lot of the ball in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I don't, like I said, I think with Burton last week, I don't expect him to be dropped because he's doing enough and finding his feet. I suppose that's probably a bit of a cop out, but he was such a good backman when posted in that spot with his great overhead marking and good positioning, and he does have good disposal as well.
He's got a brilliant.
I'll quickly check.
Yeah. I do
Sorry,
agree, though.
guys. Yeah, 71. He kicked at 71, so it's probably
Mhm.
below this competition average, which I think is about 75. Um, it might be around 70. So he's kicking it fairly well. It's just if he's not getting his hands on the ball, that I'll take that in one hand. But when you do get the ball, or if you're in and around the ball in a defensive position, make the most of that moment and impact just that fraction bit more. I'm not overly upset with him, like how he's playing. Just like him to impact a little bit more because he is very capable.
Yeah, yeah. No, I absolutely agree. It's actually funny. So when you said his name, I was like, I haven't even thought about him all weekend, and that's probably speaks to
Yeah.
the issue that is in play, is that he's just not quite impacting the game in the way that, because he's one of those guys like Burton as well, who was on my short list, that I think you look at them and go, their upside is borderline, because you know how clean they can be with the ball and how flashy. And then Bergman's really built himself into quite the. He's got a really good AFL body, and his disposal is
Yeah.
quite good, and his attack on the ball at his best is really, really good. His overhead marking, all those things. He's got all the attributes to be, if you put him in the right positions or whatever. Whether he gets there, I don't know. And but he's kind of got that. You could see him making an All-Australian side, kind of like Darcy Byrne-Jones made it, and that was out of the blue. So it's
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
guy, like his
If you put
upside.
it all
His
together for a
upside
year.
is that good of a player, and so that's kind of what you want out of him. And just to it's a little bit of game review again, just briefly, but it kind of touches on what you're saying about these guys that are just not quite involved as much as you want them. Where Melbourne won the game a lot was their 16 through 23 guys, like 15 through 23 guys, whatever, their bottom rungs players were the ones that helped win them the game. Like,
Yeah.
guys that there was a lot of their unsung heroes were the ones that were really winning the game on the weekend for them. Whereas we were probably being let down by some of those guys. And again, not knocking Lockie Jones in this sense, but it was just those moments where it was Burton, Bergman, Jones. They're just this Asava on the goal line stuff. It's not knocking them. It is, but it is all of those moments on the other side of the coin with Melbourne. They were winning those moments, and we weren't in those kind of 14, 15 through the end of the list guys. And that's and in a game that's won by 7 points or lost by 7 points for us. It's those fine margins matter, and it's at the same time, it's like it doesn't take much to improve as well, which is kind of the positive side of what you're saying as well. Is like there's so much more they can offer.
Yeah.
So we can get there, but that's the reason you lose games like this as well, is when you're not quite at your best, and then that's where the game gets lost. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Bergman's at his best, he's a highlight reel player. That's like he's really flashy. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was everywhere in round one, and his tackling pressure was one of the main reasons I put him in my votes. Plus, he had 3 shots on goal, which obviously he missed all of them. But yeah, if you're doing that, obviously convert a bit better.
Well, again, that goes for a few, so it's not like it's isolated. So
yeah. Who's yours?
Geez, I had a hard time. So I had Burton down. I had a few. I think I need to. I hate doing this because I love him, but I think it needs to come up at some point. I think Finlayson just needs to lock in a little bit more. I think
mentally.
And obviously, I won't go into too much of it, but I was donating the ticket money last year for the family cause and whatever. There's obvious reasons that he might, but I think at some point when you're making the game day side, and we know at his best for the first 12 weeks of last year, he was really influential, kicking goals, involved in the play. He's right, and he still is, and I think he's one of those ones that you're a victim of playing multiple roles. I think that's where Ryan Burton's form slump happened last year, was when he was thrust up forward a little bit. He was doing a bit of both, because so that kind of disaffected his play towards the end of the year, because bouncing between roles sometimes doesn't help if you're having to go back and forth. Like Byrne-Jones has been helped by the fact he's just locked in up forward now, and that is his role. Finlayson pinching in the ruck, you're sacrificing a little bit of your game there, but it's just the little moment, that 50-meter penalty. Like I watched it back today, I was just like, the umpire's fucking being pretty clear. Like, move back, and he's just standing there. I'm just like, What do you?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
just like
Yeah, I
that
remember what you're
stuff.
talking about now.
Yeah,
It's just a
that's
brain fart. Like
yeah, and it was, and he just seemed
obviously
to have,
disappointed, but he just sat in that disappointment and yeah,
yeah,
just
and
get back.
particularly, yeah,
Like, get back to the nine.
yeah, because it was clear through the TV, and I assume he was hearing it fine, because
Yeah.
and in that moment before that mark was taken, he was getting kind of, you could see. I watched it back a couple of times today. I was like, I've got YouTube TV here, so I was just like using the remote and flicking back and forwards. Really helpful for watching the games back.
Yeah.
And so I watched it back a couple of times, and he's kind of, they're pushing back and forth at each other, and as the kick's coming in, and he just gets boxed out, and just, unfortunately, just outstrengthened in the contest. And I know he's not the most, you know big physical specimen of a player, but I know it is better. Like
He relies on the dark arts as
yeah,
well.
and so
He's a
it
bit
just
like
feels
that.
like everything about his game at the moment is just a little bit off. And in a forward line that is got, and this is the interesting thing with the selection mix, is like with Mitch Georgiades coming in and kicking. Obviously, we got hammered pretty decently by Glenelg, unfortunately, in the Sandful on the weekend. But Georgiades, I think, kicked 3.
Yeah.
Took some
I
grabs. Like,
think
he just looks.
that's what I remember.
Yeah, like he's gonna be looking to come back into the side at some point. So there will be a selection squeeze up forward.
Yeah.
Finlayson does, obviously, it does change a lot of the mix of our side if we drop him out, because he does some ruck work, and and he does some handy ruck work as well. And I value that, and I value a lot about his game. And he did pop up at the end of the game, and had a little hand and kicked a couple of goals, but unfortunately, it was like at the end when it was kind of, the moment was there still.
That soccer goal was opportune.
Yeah, it was very, and it was very,
And a
very
video
well
highlight.
done. Yeah, and then he kicked that one with 20 seconds to go as well. And and again, he was in the game at that moment because he went back and kicked the goal very quickly.
Very interesting set shot.
Yeah.
Probably more like the interesting mental aspect of football and set shot kicking is because he knew he had to hurry if we were to have any chance of the most slimmest of likely miracles.
Yeah.
But he went straight back and kicked it straight away in motion, yeah.
It is like
in another world, on another day, it probably goes, oh, you rushed it and so you shanked it. But yeah, it's just interesting when a forward just gets to work, doesn't. So, and like they run a lot, so a lot of that 30 seconds is them getting their breath back, which people they undervalue in this day and age. But yeah, it's just interesting how he went straight back, he went straight into his routine or his set shot and split the middle. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting. Is it that simple?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a little bit of Jay Schultz on the Pairs and the Pod guys, and he just said this is like his goal kicking routine. Once he figured out that, like, you spent when you're in play and kicking, so that's why his routine is. And it kind of, Finlayson just went back.
He just got in motion.
He just got in motion. Yeah. So it was like almost an in play set shot in a way. So yeah,
100%. Yeah.
So I didn't. Because there was a few choices for this, and it's just a spotlight because I know how good he can be, and I want him to. I think Finlayson can be an indispensable part of the side at his best, and I want him to find that form again because I really like him as a player, and I think obviously what he's been going through over the last couple of years is like the fact that he's as mentally strong as anyone, but but in those moments, like there was a brain fade in the pocket there when he just wasn't acknowledging what the umpire was saying. And the umpire, for me, in a game where I had plenty of criticism for the umpires, and I did the little Ted Lasso edit about,
I saw that,
about hiding and taking the license plate of the umpire's car, and I don't condone it, but yeah, it was one of those ones that was very clear what the umpire was demanding, and it's just in those moments in games, in a game of tight margins, when you've got the ball in your forward line as well, you want to try and lock it in. And that's where sometimes we are at our best is when a team's trying to exit our forward line and we can lock it in. And you've just given them a freebie to get out of there and go forward, which is So yeah, and it's
I don't think you'd be alone in that criticism.
Yeah, and
it would take it would be a brave call to drop him after he's bounced back from not kicking any goals in round 1 to 5 in 2 games. So how, yeah, like you said, it was a bit junk timey, those couple of goals, but yeah, what's he
So
being judged on by the
it was a
coaching
close
group?
game. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it'd be a brave call to drop someone when they're kicking goals, but
Hmm.
there are moments in games where, yeah, you're just like, come on, zone in a bit better on that
Hmm.
piece of play,
Yeah.
or just get out of your head just that fraction, uh,
Hmm.
like disappointment in a call going against him or whatnot. And I think there was one passage of play where, yeah, I think he was manning up on Lever, trying to do his own thing, and he kind of let Lever have a bit of an open run and took a
Hmm.
mark. And yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'm probably not as concerned. Just like him to, yeah, again, just that fraction,
Yeah.
just pick it up. And
Yeah, and I'm
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
I actually don't I bring up the selection squeeze more because I know it's going to be brought up. I actually don't think I still think he's pretty important to the side as far as his ruck time. I think that's an important part of it because otherwise, what are you doing? You bring because otherwise you're throwing. It's either you bring Sweet in and then that's not doing the forward line any favors. I don't think. I don't know much
yeah,
about Sweet's forward line play to be fair, so that's on me in that sense. So it's changing the mix too much, and then otherwise you're bringing in Georgiades for Finlayson, and then it's
yeah. After one
and,
SANFL,
yeah,
like proper
and then it's
SANFL game,
and then it's Dixon taking more ruck time, which is something I don't want to see because I think that's
yeah,
what contributed to a bit of his injuries at times. So yeah, no, I think Finlay's still pretty indispensable in his role. It's just that's why I put the spotlight on him is because I want to
yeah,
see him lock in a little bit more and find that form.
hmm
It's a positive spot, as always we say these spotlights to try for improvement are in a positive vein because we want it's guys that we know that can do a lot more and we know they're best and we want to see him get back to it and just those little moments in this game are ones that in a tight game can you don't want to see it happen at the pointy end of the season. So if he irons it out over the next few weeks, that would be great. So yeah, tough one to bring up, but yeah, there's like Lockie Jones. We talked about enough. I was just like, and again, I think it's I always try to refrain from guys that haven't bet like Lockie Jones still isn't a week in week out player yet. Like he was in and out of the side a little bit last year. He's getting there, but I find him to still be not one I want to do that to yet because he's still betting into the side. But Finlayson's a guy that's been in the side for years now and at the AFL level for years now and playing in grand finals at GWS and all that. So um, yeah,
yeah,
had to put it on him, but it's only because I know
yeah,
there's plenty. He's got plenty to give this side, so I just want to see him bring that back. So
yeah.
yeah, all right,
Agreed.
the fun stuff.
Yeah,
Well, first of all, I will. I did get the vote, and I'll do this. I'll try to do this every week now. Winners of the previous week before we get into it. So the Sweeney last week was. Well, I'll do goal of the week first because that's what we'll do first. Goal of the week was the DBJ versus the Charlie
Charlie
Dunkley 50.
Longbomb.
Yeah, the Charlie Long
Yeah,
Bomb. DBJ won pretty clearly, 73.3% of the vote for the DBJ Galazzo. So yeah,
yeah,
that one goes into
yeah.
them. That
It's
one,
hard to ignore.
it is, yeah, aesthetically pleasing. I think I kind of screwed you on that one a little bit. Uh,
That's
but
fine.
yeah, and so that one goes into the mix for our end of the year vote. So that'll be fun. It's gonna. I'm just excited to see what the mix of moments will be. But the Sweeney one is going to be the really interesting mix. It's just going to be a bunch of random shit, I think. But
Yeah,
uh,
100%.
this one was a little bit closer. 61.1% of the vote went for the Todd, our moment that we talked about being quite erotic in the end. Todd Marshall hyping up Charlie Dixon, banging on his pecs, won with 61.1% of the vote. So, and that was over your
Yeah,
Rioli, the Rioli pressure act
Rioli
in the
effort.
goal,
Yeah,
yeah, in the goal square. So, and that was reasonably close in the vote. So, yeah, that's the winners for last week. So keep an eye out at the end of the season. Looking forward to collating all that, and I'm going to do it kind of probably.
drilling down. Gonna have
Yeah,
to do a knockout tournament, I
yeah. I'm trying to
think.
think if we do like a bracketology thing, or just do like a survey where people just vote and
Mm.
do like the like your election where you get the big sheet and have to do like fucking 60 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Market 1 to 60.
yeah. But this week, goal of the week, you get to go first on this one.
All right.
It's an interesting
Yeah,
one.
look, I'm gonna have to pick some low-hanging fruit, but I think. Oh, actually, I say that, but
I don't think there's
I
any
see
low-hanging fruit.
the
Exactly.
play of the day was Willie's team goal. I think Willie's other goal was pretty decent, where he span out the back of a pack
Hmm.
deep inside 50. But Houston launched and kicked a true Houston on the run goal from 50 in the second quarter, which was delicious. So yeah, that's my pick.
Support from Soldo. Here's Butters, centering kick. Langdon coming in for the support. Beautiful hands. Jackson Mead is going to give it off immediately. Houston, we know what a powerful kick Houston is, and he nails it. Port back in front.
That's a good one. That was I had that
Jackson Mead, I think, took a contested mark and flicked it off.
Yeah, and just a classic Houston move as well. And to have him, yeah, Houston will come up again later in the podcast as well. So
Agreed.
but yeah, he's kind of hit the ground running again this year, and certainly in that goal, he
another
was
new leader.
I had that one in my mix as well, but I had the Rioli run from the boundary. The way he just kind of, I really like that's honorable mention, I guess, being that you brought it up as well. I'm not going to vote for that one, I don't think. It's going to be DBJ again, but the Rioli run from boundary, just the way he spun out the back and kind of was aware of where the defense, like the fact that they had the defense out of position and that he could.
He'd overcommitted, yeah,
and he could. Well, the fact that he knew. Once he spun away from that defender, he had an open run to the goal square and to finish that way. And in a game that was, again, bereft of chances at times, like chances were at a bit of a premium for a small forward to kind of understand the way to increase your chance of scoring to basically 100% when you're running into the goal square. We know it's not truly 100% from some embarrassing moments of the years across the AFL, but he did that well. But I think the opening goal...
Massive challenge of Max Gawn, and Gawn gets first hand on it, picked up by Will and Drew. Butters, keep your eye on him, and Rosie, slick hands in there. Drew sends the power inside forward 50. Charlie Dixon, clever little knock. Burne-Jones, ripping start from Port Adelaide. Darcy Burne-Jones gets the first.
Overall, aesthetically, as a team, like the way it came out of the centre square, and it was a great sequence of handballs to get out there. But then again, DBJ, the snap and just the way his eye for goal, I think, is really good at the moment. And he kind of just finds himself in position and then can finish the way. I'm always impressed with guys that have a regular ability to finish from wherever they are, and then we've seen that. DBJ's got 5 goals over the last couple of weeks, and in a variety of ways. Obviously, last week he won a goal of the week as well, so it'll be interesting to see.
He's in and around it.
Yeah, so it'll be DBJ versus Houston this week, and it'll be interesting to see where the votes go. Yeah, it might just be who still finds DBJ a scapegoat or not, and compared to the Houston. So Houston's a popular boy, but I like his eye for goal is really good at the moment.
Particularly when we spoke about starting well. You can't start much better than that. Is it under 20 seconds?
Exactly.
In the game.
Yeah. I really love that one. I just wanted to give some flowers to that. So it was a tough one this week. Actually, I in the immediate ashes of the game, I was like, "Fuck, I got to pick a goal in a fucking moment." But I thought that was actually when I watched back the goals. I thought that was a really, really nice finish. And like I said, I'm always quite impressed with guys that can snap and kick goals regularly from wherever they are. And he's got a decent little bag of different goals over the last couple of weeks, whether it be set shots, runs from 45 meters out an angle, or soccer finishes from last week. So he's finding ways to find the goals and finding his way into goal of the week contention as well.
I think he did convert a set shot as well.
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah. All right, the Sweeney. I found this one a little bit tougher this week.
Sweeney, yeah.
I don't know if you did as well, but I do have one.
Oh, I had one fairly easy one, but yeah, I'll see what you say first. Yeah,
if I take your easy one, then it'll be interesting. Jed McEntee's tackle in the square.
Silk and Jonesy, this is Frankie Evans. Touched off the boot. Harrison Petty, well tackled by McEntee. Evans picks it up. and he goals. Port have kicked the first three.
Probably in a similar vein to your Rioli one last week. I thought early in the game, I think it's Francis Evans ends up finishing the goal. But I thought
McEntee should have been rewarded with a free kick.
I thought it was holding the ball. Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
exactly. So watching it back, I was like, oh, maybe he didn't have as much. I thought he had more prior, but still, we got pinged holding the ball a couple of times pretty quick on the weekend as well. So based on how it was umpired, I thought there was some prior there. So yeah. But he had a pretty good first quarter. Obviously, again, his role is somewhat of a thankless one, and certainly he's can be a bit of a scapegoat at the moment.
He's a bit of a whipping boy.
Yeah, but I thought he was doing what he could in his role. In that
he led our tackles inside 50 just on that point.
Oh, did he? I didn't actually
with 4.
Yeah,
but the next best is 2, which is a group of people. So
yeah,
you talk about role playing. That's just a little insight.
Exactly, and that's why I wanted to give him when I saw that. I immediately actually on the night I was like, all right, that might just go into the short list. And as it went, I didn't have too many others really that were strong on my short list. So pressure acts, especially again in a game that ended up at the time it felt like shit we could kick a bag of goals, but as it tightened up and we didn't get as many as we thought we might, but.
Yeah,
and that early little run of goals, and he obviously kicked one before that as well. I think he kicked our second goal after the DBJ one, and then he makes that tackle that ends up in the Francis Evans goal there as well. And
because he kicked our second, and he got called Frankie Evans, and then Frankie Evans kicked our next goal.
Yeah, exactly. So Frankie Evans had a couple early.
I noticed they're 31 and 41. So do I want to give Darcy a little out there? I don't think so.
No, I don't, because they still look
fucking job.
Good. Yeah,
do his fucking job. Yeah,
exactly.
Hate it.
It's
anyway.
standard commentating is just in the 12.
Oh, hearing actual commentators commentate football is one of the most refreshing things.
Yeah,
when watching football, some of the people who should quite frankly be a lot better are pretty disappointing. But we could go off on a huge tangent in that regard.
That's a whole other podcast in of its own. Yeah. Anyway, so that's mine. I'll be interested to see where you've gone because I don't. Yeah, I didn't take yours, did I?
No, you didn't. No, I was surprised with that one. That was a good one though. Like you said, similar to mine last week. I want to give an honorable mention to one thing that kind of like tickled my fancy, and I was like, whoa, it was Boak. He like sidestepped through traffic in the first quarter and got an effective handball away. And it kind of, just took me back a little bit. And he's obviously not as nimble as he used to be. And to be fair, I think, at his lower ebbs, after being pushed out in the midfield for those couple of years, like he was getting caught holding the ball a lot. But when he's at his best, and especially as captain, early Hinkley days, he was, amazing around the ground. And that kind of just took me back. That's not my one, though, so I won't stick on that one too long. It was the 10-minute mark of the first quarter. It's not a football play, but it's just the applause from the crowd.
I did have that one in my shortlist as well, so
It was the first one I wrote down because I'm like, well, this is pretty easy. It's a feel-good moment. But more so because it had time to breathe. Like there was general play going on. I was trying to remember, it had been organized for someone else. I think it might have been Robbie's last game or something like it was a milestone of some sort. But everyone was like, yeah, we'll clap at this minute mark of whatever. And then I think the opposition kicked a goal. So it kind of just quickly killed all momentum.
I'm trying to think. I remember
whatever it was for.
It was in the last couple of years, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was recently for sure. But the good thing about that was that it started and everyone was like, oh, people are clapping. It was like, oh, yeah, that's right. And and then I don't think he got the ball, but just general play was unfolding. So the crowd could just go nuts for the whole minute. We got him in his 351st, and it was good to pay credit to the legend who will, go in our Port Adelaide's Hall of Fame. If not the AFL Hall of Fame at some stage in the future. Probably not the immediate future, but
he's a
Okie.
That's a good one. Like I said, it was in my shortlist, but I was like, I wanted to get those. Sometimes you just try to find, those little ones.
100%. Yeah. I've lost a couple of these polls just for you're just looking for something specific sticks out to you or
Yeah.
anyone else watching the game, and it makes you feel good.
That's a good one, especially because it was, like I said, it was kind of felt like his milestone game for us as fans. For that fan, or because I think it came from some Facebook and Twitter posts. I think Port Adelaide Cheer Squad possibly started it, and I just remember seeing it start bouncing around. I was like, it's a really cool idea, and even me, I'd kind of forgotten about it on the night because it was fucking game was on at 1:30 my time, so I'm usually in a state of delirium at that point watching these late games, which sometimes lends itself to the Twitter content. But yeah, it kind of like again. I was saying the applause started. I was like, oh yeah, and then they did flash pan the camera to him a couple of times, and I'd have to watch it. I'd have to watch it back a bit, and I will because I'll obviously clip it for the socials with our votes, but. It looked like he gave a little acknowledgement to it as well.
He kind of put his hand up.
Yeah, I think he kind of just.
They were zoomed in on him, so
yeah.
I don't know if that was to the crowd, but because it was also on the scoreboards.
Yeah,
the Adelaide Oval also put him up, and I can't remember if that was at like that moment or
I like to think
so.
it was.
We'll just say it was.
I like to think it was an acknowledgement to the crowd, but I'll give it a bit of a watch back again when I clip it. But yeah, no, that's a really good one. That's the spirit of the Sweeney, man. It's the warm and fuzzy. She's just looking adoringly at Travis Spoke, which I know.
Yeah, you need a silver lining.
Yeah, well, plenty of us sport fans.
Loss.
Alrighty. The Player of the Year voting, which I think this week's going to throw some. It's going to tighten up the voting a little bit. You get to go first this week with your.
All right.
5.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So, look, again, like I mentioned earlier, it was a bit tough because I felt that different people had different moments that they took advantage of. And it was, I don't know, just pretty hard. You probably could have probably the top one. I think most people would agree, the best on ground.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you could shuffle the deck with the next perhaps. So it's whatever you value as a spectator, really.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned, I turned off my fantasy points because I think you can be a bit biased towards that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
In saying that, it looks like I've got 4 midfielders in the 5 anyway. So my one vote, it goes to the man of the moment, and that is Travis Spoke. Particularly because of his influence in the first half and his second quarter in particular, having 12 disposals. The game's on the line in the first half. We wanted a good start, and he was in line with that request, I guess you could say, or what we wanted to see. He ended with 24 disposals, 11 of those contested. He got 4 clearances and 4 inside 50s. That's probably the most of it. But for my one vote, I think, when some of those other players were a bit lower to start the game, he lifted and contributed to our successful half. So he's got my one vote. Number 2, my 2 votes goes to the captain, Connor Rozee. And while I don't think he had his best game, I thought, again, captaining his 3rd game, I really, every time I watch him play, he's trying to influence as much of the game as possible, and not in a negative way. It's just a really great sign, particularly for this team and how it unfolds under his leadership. He's not taking it back with Sepp, and 26 disposals, 10 contested, 17 pressure acts as well, 5 clearances. You said the 400 meters gained, and five intercept possessions too. So that's what I mean. I think he was pretty mid-table with tackles, but I think it's another aspect of his game, the defensive side of his game, that gets overlooked a lot. So he had the 5 intercept possessions in this game, which shows that he's working very hard in every direction, which is again weighted with the weight of captaincy, which I don't think he's shirked at all in the first three rounds. And I'm a little bit biased, but again, like I said, you could shuffle the deck on 1 through 4, I think. I thought that he played a good overall game, influential when he needed to be. Obviously kicked that goal at the end, which I think he deserved off of a free kick.
God, the fucking Melbourne fans call him a fucking flop.
The tackle, it was two motions in the tackle. You just can't do it. Whether you think he exaggerated it or not, I think it
Well,
was it
particularly the fact
Sparrow or Rivers?
it was Rivers.
Don't tackle that way,
Well,
and you have nothing to worry
particularly,
about.
besides that, it's the fact that after the whistle had fucking gone and you got a free anyway. Like, you guys
Yeah,
had the fucking ball.
yeah,
Like, yeah, it
yeah.
was
I
a
don't understand why there's a
Yeah.
bit of ego maybe spilling over, but something that you juxtaposed with our round one goal kicking was he had a set shot and he kicked it, so it was a
Mm-hmm.
perfect kick. So
Yeah.
there are gems in the rough, but in
Mm.
terms of set shot goal kicking, but yeah, he had his chance and yeah, he did it. So my
Mm.
3 votes goes to Wines. I think that he's probably hasn't been spoken about a lot with a lot of people, but he's doing a lot of grunt work.
Mm.
25 disposals, about half of those contested. The 8 clearances, 7 inside 50s, which led to 5 score involvements and 340 meters gained. But we all know he's more of a inside distributor
Mm.
rather than a territory contributor. But in saying that, he's probably one of the worst offenders going back a while with in regards to our inside 50 entries. Very he plays away a lot and it'd be a lot of
Yeah.
junk disposal. And while I don't think his disposal efficiency was outstanding, I feel that in particularly around his Brownlow year, the years around that, his field kicking, particularly going forward, is one of the biggest improvements in his game.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed again on the weekend him lowering the eyes a little bit. And look, yeah, I mean, he had 7 inside 50s, which led to 5 scores. I'm not sure how many of those were goal assists. I don't think many, but involved in play. And yeah, the unheralded, excuse me, with his grunt work, which is what we wanted him to do coming back into the middle as
Yeah.
a true center. My 4 votes goes to Dan Houston, flying a little bit under the radar, but he's just getting to business, getting down to business. And
Mm-hmm.
again, he only had the 18 disposals, but he kicked it at 83 or disposed of it at 83%, which I think stands out. Again, in a game against a top 4 contender, which is separated by moments, having the ball in the hands of people who can use it well is very important. And he lives that nearly every week. 21 pressure acts, 5 tackles inside 50 too. So he's getting quite high up the ground and still making an influence on top of the goal that we've already mentioned. Nearly 500 meters gained, 5 inside 50s, which led to 6 score involvements. So overall, great game from a halfback, an attacking halfback. Always dangerous. And yeah, just on the disposal efficiency, though, as an aside, I'm pretty sure our highest players in terms of efficiency were our back 6. Think of their individual games however you will, but I think Alir was actually the biggest outlier, or Kane Farrell, if you want to class him as a halfback. But yeah, I believe the top 6 disposal efficiency leaders were our backs, which is super important. Like you need to get it out of danger, and if you can use the ball, it just helps so much.
Yeah.
In an era where disposal around the ground, goal kicking, pick your poison isn't probably at its best, depending on which perspective you want to look at it. But yeah, I thought he was, in terms of influence, for me, he was second best. And then best on ground for me was obviously Willem Drew from Go to Woe, which, again, no surprises now. He's flourishing in his 2016 draft with Sam Powell-Pepper, I think, and Todd Marshall.
Yeah,
So
I'm trying to think because I'm a card guy. I have
so
his
I think
draft
what would that
card.
make it anyway? His 7th season, because he would have.
Yeah, because
His first year is 2017, although he debuted the year after.
I remember
yeah,
my brother asking me, "What do you think about Willem Drew?" when he was like doing his fantasy team one year, and like it was like early on when he wasn't even a stable part of our side yet, and I was just like,
yeah.
I remember saying to him, I was like, I think he's gonna make it. I just don't know when. And it probably took maybe another year before he became the guy he is. But yeah, he always just seemed to. It's just funny how he's just slowly ebbed into the side to be
Yeah,
the player he is now.
I think he's his disposals are leading to results a bit more now.
Mhm.
He's still doing jobs throughout games, but his disposals are netting some more positive results, I think, is the thing that's making him stand out a bit better. But on top of that, half of his disposals were contested, 11 tackles, which is just all the Willem Drew stuff, and 29 pressure acts, which I think was the highest from Port Adelaide. 10 clearances, 9 inside 50s, 8 score involvements, going at 76%. It's just his overall game is coming together quite well, and he stood out, I think, for mine, especially after rewatching it, for sure.
He was far and away best on ground, and this is incredible. And I just want to put it out and make sure the listeners know we did not talk about this at all before in any way, shape, or form. Like, we have no idea.
We haven't Yahtzeed again, have we?
Well, we have.
You're kidding.
That's what you'll see. Like,
I was expecting this one to actually, just separate.
So was
be
I.
completely different.
I was like, in my head, I was just like, I feel like it's going to be controversial. I don't know if Butters in there, but the fact that neither of us do is just like,
look,
he was the
could make
one
an
that
argument
you
for
could
Butters, but I don't think he had a fantastic game.
I think
he tried very, very hard, and he had some good passages of play.
I think he was working hard the whole game. He just couldn't find his way into it to have the Butters. It basically was like my discussion in my head was, which no one should ever be privy to because discussions in my head are scary. But in this in the subject of football, it was like Travis Boak was like the one that I think when we do it, I feel like considering we've just Yahtzeed again for the
second time in a row now.
Yeah, second time in a row. It's
that's amazing.
We think about it pretty similarly, and I think like we have an expectation for Butters when it's lower than what it is. You do lower him down a bit, whereas Boak is, as we said earlier, in game 351, he was playing that well, so that's why I had to give him the flowers. And then Willem Drew, we don't need to go through it again because you pretty much covered all my points. You went through the stats and stuff. Willem Drew also was 500 meters gained, which is top for our side on the day as well. And just as like an extension of what you said about his getting more disposals, he does seem to have got more confidence in actually punching the ball forward, and being that guy that's going to be like be one of those guys like the Butters and Rosies and co that do
makes you feel a lot more comfortable with how our future is shaping up as a club. Because I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he's a chance to potentially be one for trade discussions or whatever. Maybe a little bit. I mean, if he keeps going the way he's going.
My question without notice is like, is he as indispensable to our side structure as Butters and Rosie? Now,
I think the way that he negates opposition guns makes him fairly indispensable, because it's such a point in an era where tagging isn't as prevalent as it once was. If you have someone who can negate while also punish you in the other direction, it's such an attractive point of difference to any other team in the competition. And I don't know if you can shy away from that. And that's why I feel that like him being moved out to a wing, and he's still going in center rotations, but he can still contribute around the ground, which he's doing quite handsomely to start this year. So, I mean, take Shea Bolton in the Richmond game. He had a fantastic first half. And while Willem also had a fantastic first half, they flicked that switch and went, no, you need to take him out of the game. And it was the right call. And Willem didn't drop off either. He might have drawn back a little bit in terms of the flashy stuff and whatnot. I can't remember, even though he was in our votes last week as well. I think he is fairly indispensable in that regard. In saying that, if all he is doing is negating, that's when you get into dispensable territory.
That's where I think,
because that's out of I can't remember how old he would be if it's his 7th season. He would be mid-20s. So where like in his first kind of breakout season a few years ago, where he was like top 5 in tackles for the competition, you're going, oh, this is a young up and comer. Like he's ticking a few boxes, and you play him for the experience, and he's contributing these defensive things. You're going, great. But you got to evolve as you get older through your 20s, and he is.
Yeah.
And he isn't just negating anymore. He is actually finding ways of affecting the game in his own right.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to. It popped up into my head as I was saying. I was stealing from a great fun AFL podcast. If you don't listen to it, the Junk Time is just a really
Right,
fun
yeah.
one. And they just question without notice, and I was just like in my head, I was like, this is that I just popped into my head, and I was just like, because he has elevated to that position of in this game in particular, I really really noticed him doing some of the things I was hoping Rosie and Butters would do more in this game, which was those really key kicks inside forward 50 and moving and getting the ball moving forward positively in a game that didn't have as much of that as again we've compared it a little bit to the last week's game. So yeah, no need to run over mine because they were the exact same as Jamie's. And again, I'll say this before we get into a quick rundown of Essendon before we finish off here. We don't talk about this at all. So it's just funny that we've, because I know the first week we were a little bit different in some aspects and had a couple different ones in there, but
yeah.
It just shows.
Which I would expect from a fairly good winning team.
Mm-hmm.
A team that's winning, even though we lost. But yeah, we've got a lot of contributors, so yeah, that's what makes it. And it was one of those type of games.
Yeah, it is funny because I think a few people had Butters in their best. I think I looked at a couple of articles that had Butters listed in their best players. I was just like, he's just not in my top 5 for this game. It is funny that we went the same direction. Anyway, it's Gather Round coming up this weekend. Essendon Friday night game. So another primetime game. Looking like decent weather, sunny 22 for the day is what I see as the forecast. This far out, obviously those things can change, but looks like it's going to be beautiful conditions for a night game. Peter Wright obviously out with the another one of the 4-week suspensions for is it a bump? Was it intentional? Was it careless? Whatever. So he's out. That was already, we already knew that going into last week. Sam Durham got tackled and looks like he had some discomfort. I haven't seen anything about him.
I think the player who bumped him has been offered a
1 week.
1 weeker or something.
It was
Windhager?
Windhager. Yeah, it was Windhager. Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it as Windhager or Windhager, but yeah, it was him. Yeah.
And with the commentary, like we alluded to before, you can't even take their word for it.
Yeah.
Some of the time.
Exactly.
So
fuck it. It could
choose your own adventure.
It could have been Philippa. Who knows? Sam Durham. I haven't seen anything. All I've seen is the fact that it looked like a shoulder, and he was and I watched the playback just to see how it looked visually, because sometimes he looked in some significant discomfort, so he might be out, but we don't know. He was just the only injury report out of the game. So overall, Essendon in pretty good form going into this one. I don't think they've been great this year, but they haven't been terrible, and they've been in the news, the Essendon Edge, all that stuff. That's what we've got to deal with this week. And being Gather Round, there's a bit of a spotlight on it as well, I think. So
yeah,
this one is a bit of a danger game. I think it's one that we should win. But
yeah,
3 things to watch. I'll let you take yours first, and I'll jump.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the fact that Essendon seem to be going with a Draper-Goldstein combination, whereas we've obviously stuck with the one ruck. Even with the threat of Max Gawn, we still stuck with our ruck setup the way we did. And look, it's just an interesting question whether we try, your comments in relation to Finlayson, the fact that we don't want to jump at shadows, but also the opportunity to try something early in the season just to see if it works. Not sure if I've made my mind up yet on whether I want them to, because obviously big fan of Finlayson, and he's probably the obvious one to kind of lose his spot if they do want to try it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I think we will bounce back. So, and while Essendon will be coming over with, a real mission and a lot of chutzpah from beating St Kilda, I just think it's probably a game that they can try something like that. And because I wouldn't want them to wait too long if it's in their thoughts at the moment. You might as well do it early, see what it looks like. And if it doesn't necessarily work, hopefully we win still. But give Sweet, Soldo, the team, everyone some learnings on where to improve. If it's going to work with some work down the line, or if Soldo, Finlayson, Dixon up forward is going to be the mix. But so yeah, it's an interesting thought. They could maybe drop Goldstein or something. I think Draper's their first still, but yeah. If they do decide to stick with Draper and Goldstein, yeah, how are we going to combat that? That's one thing I'm interested in for this weekend.
Yeah, because Soldo ended up making, I think, if you look at the match report on AFL.com for last week, like he still made it into our best players, even though he's probably, like, as far as the actual pure hit out game goes, obviously it was towed up by
he worked hard.
Gawn, but he
really
worked hard, he
him.
battled hard, and we won the clearance battle.
Max Gawn just had a really great game,
it's Max Gawn. Like, at some point, you've just got to seed the fact that they're a champion player and they're going to get their, it's kind of like, LeBron's going to get his 30 probably somewhere around that mark, even though he's fucking 40 almost.
Yeah. They're in the upper echelon for a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason, but he still battled away hard, and we did win the clearance battle, and got our hands on the ball out of the middle, and still got the ball forward. So, and he does battle, and it is interesting as a side note, like if we were going to do the 2 ruck thing, and if you're going to run the magnets around, Soldo has proved himself as a decent lead up forward as well, and obviously he did miss that goal.
Keeps getting opportunities, so it's a lot more than what Lysette provided up forward.
Yeah, exactly. So he can do that rest up forward kind of thing if you were going to do the 2 ruck thing, and probably be just as good a lead up. But how the structure changes across the game if he is up there a little bit more, who knows? But yeah, it is a really interesting one to watch. Kind of as a side note for that, like my one to watch this weekend is really kind of low hanging fruit, but the forward line is the big thing. Question out of last week's game is kind of the adjustments as we go forward, because we saw last year when we had a couple of bad games, and we really adjusted through that 13-game win streak and all that. Like the disposal going inside 50 got a lot better, and that's where you and I touched on that a little bit earlier, like that we did seem to improve on that over last year. But this last week's game was a little bit more of a regression to the mean that we had been used to probably from previous years, as far as a little bit frustrating and the forward line structure not quite in sync. So both kind of how the forwards are working together and finding space, as well as the disposal going inside 50 is really something to watch with this one, particularly with Essendon. I think they've got a decent backline at the moment. Ben McKay's had a really good start to the Ben or Harry, depends which side when you fall on that one. But no, Ben McKay, one and the same. He takes a quick little Uber from the one game to the other. But yeah, he's had a good start to life at Essendon, and in particular, kind of it's a little side storyline. Not that we're really in on the Ben McKay stuff, because he was always looked like he was going there, but we were a team in the market for defensive changes in the trade market last year, and McKay was one of the players that was out there. So be really interesting to see how our forward line matches up with kind of a little revamped defense that Essendon got in reasonable health as well, I think. Down there.
Yeah, he's straightened them up definitely down back early days.
Yeah.
But again, I think we have the firepower to combat that. And while you were talking, I just thought I would just suss out who's kicking our goals and alternatively who kicked the goals for Melbourne. And all bar Soldo, Rosie, and Houston, all of our goals on the weekend were kicked by forwards. So although, our goal kicking needs work for sure, maybe we need a bit more from the midfield in terms of goals, because Melbourne actually had contributors kicking goals from the midfield as well. That's when you know your team's really on. But the forwards have a lot of pressure on them, whether warranted or not. There's that perception. So again, they'll be wanting to get off to a good start as a team, but as a forward group, putting those kind of dogs at bay a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because it can be infectious too.
Well. Yeah.
Either way, if you start poorly kicking for goal, it kind of has a tends to have a flow or domino effect. And alternatively, if you're kicking well, as Melbourne found out, that can have a domino effect in the positive as well. So yeah, a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm really intrigued. It's just it is more for me, and you touched on it there. Is just like is to see them respond to, because it is
Because they probably
often,
feel like they don't have much to respond to. Like,
yeah, because I think they're
yeah,
overall, but
the
then
first round was ridiculous in terms of the imbalance. But 2 weeks in a row now, we've actually kicked more goals than behinds, and yeah, we had opportunities squandered.
and
Everyone acknowledges that, but it in their minds, they're probably thinking, well, and I hope they're keeping level-headed about it, of course, because that'll only benefit them this week and beyond. But yeah, they probably feel like they're not doing too much wrong.
yeah.
But
To be fair, like as we've touched on before as well, the overall AFL isn't incredible in goal kicking. Melbourne's
I
goal
mean,
kicking.
Essendon
Melbourne's
were
goal
benefactors of St Kilda being so deplorable in their conversion, especially early in that game. St Kilda should have put that game to bed, but they squandered it, and Essendon benefited from it.
Yeah.
And the Friday night game between the Crows and Freo was one of the worst games of football I've ever watched from a skills point of view. They both, it was like 4 goals to, I think it was 4 goals to 8 in the end, but it was like, 3 goals, 12 each, pretty much at one point. And
I woke up the next morning and was like, oh, I might put the replay on. And just kind of like, before I got out of bed, scrolling on Twitter and just saw a gazillion tweets about how fucking shit the game was. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that.
Well, and Chad Corns has put it out on, talking about low-hanging fruit. Chad Corns has put it out there. He's put it on the table that they've actually done a lot of work in the off season, and they have a process that they're trying to stick to. So they want to net some results is not probably not the right way to put it, but in some people's eyes, that's what they would be thinking.
Some of the Twitter comments that we got were like
a lot
about the goal kicking coaching and stuff like that. So there is and I don't mind that they put that stuff out there either. I like that when they put the expectation out there. That's a good thing, I think. And it's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Sometimes it's just the nature of it. And I think just a nice positive way to finish. 3 things to watch for this week was we both loved Xavier Dersma when he was at the club, and he's coming back to play at Adelaide Oval for the first time in the AFL competition in different colours than Port Adelaide. And I think it's something that just is disappointing about how his career ended here after getting the number 7 jersey and all that stuff. The fact that he just injuries cruelled his career, because I think even at the start of last year I thought he was playing pretty well, but again he's just unlucky with injuries. But coming off a pretty damn good game. I think he was listed second best for Essendon in their win last week, 23 disposals. They already seen he had his first. I think you tweeted about it as well, watching him do the bow and arrow celebration.
Yeah, he kicked his first goal.
Yeah,
for the Bombers. Yeah, because as a little curiosity, like, is he going to put it away or is he going to stick with it? And fair enough, he's sticking with it. So it's his.
And I love that for the Essendon
trademark.
Fans. I love that for the Essendon fans that they get to experience that as well. I think I always got a lot of love for Xavier Dersma. So
when you see the depth of talent in the family, you just think, what could have been, maybe, and he's one of those players that if there was ever a time and his form warranted it and he was to go, oh, I wouldn't mind going back to Port Adelaide, a bit Josh Carr like, he's one of those players where you go, yes, 100% come back, sure. He was a well-liked figure, and it'll be interesting to see the reception that he gets on Friday night. But hopefully he doesn't get the arrow out.
Exactly.
And but good luck to him overall. But it'll just be it'll hurt seeing him run out for the first time on Friday. They're live for sure.
It'll be
knowing
interesting
how much he
to see
loved the club.
Crowd response if he does kick a goal and gets the arrow out. It'll be interesting to see the crowd response, because I think it could be like a Bronx cheer. There might be some that are like cheer and think, oh, wait, what are we doing here? I think,
I know.
and it'd also be
Yeah.
interesting to see how he would do it, like, because it might just be like, because the Premier League has a thing where, like, if you score against your old club, you just put your hands up and be like, "I'm sorry, man." Like, didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
but I'd absolutely respect if he scores a goal. Hopefully it's not too many, and we're winning. I'd like to have a comfortable win after last
Yeah.
week, but I think Essendon be plucky to start with, but I think we should be
Yeah.
good. I kind of feel similar to how I did about the Richmond one. 5 goals would be about the mark, I think. I
Yeah.
had a look earlier on, not that we can, bet within your means, whatever message you need to, but I always like having a look at the betting odds just to see what the bookies are doing. And I think we're $1.33, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And
Yeah.
Essendon are in the 3, so it seems like we're reasonably
Pretty well
favoured,
backed.
considering it's a 7th versus 9th. Again, the ladder
Yeah.
is confusing to some at the moment, but
It's two defenses that seem to leak goals. So
yeah,
I think
two
overall our
defenses
team
that are
has
both
better balance.
good but leak goals at the same time. It's very weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But yeah, so hopefully Dersman doesn't do too much damage to us, but I'm hopeful of a good response for him too, because it wasn't
yeah,
his.
I think we'll respond. And yeah, unfortunately, rain on his parade.
Yeah.
But I think we'll respond and yeah, learn a lot from this weekend's game, just gone against Melbourne, and really, well, hopefully they drive it home with a big win on a Friday night for sure. But I don't think so. I think it'll be a fairly moderate win.
Yeah. But again, like I said, five goals I'll be reasonably happy with. And in the modern AFL, there's becoming more even in those middle pack, especially obviously West Coast.
And it's still only early days in the season.
Yeah. And Essendon do have a decent side together these days. When you look through the lines and see some of the names they've got in there, they're actually sneaky. It's just a matter of
they've got better balance this year. They've recruited fairly well. They've done a lot of recruiting over the last 10 years. But I think Langford needs to be paid a lot of respect in the absence of Peter Wright, because he's a very accurate set shot goal kicker as well. So there's challenges, as there is in any And Ken's haters would hate it when he says, reminds everyone how even the competition is. But again, it's true. Like
it is, yeah.
The moment you don't pay someone respect is the moment that you'll quickly find out about it in AFL. And I rate Langford. He's been great for them, swinging up forward after being a defender for so long. But yeah,
going to be a fun one.
I think it'll be good.
A solid 2:10 a.m. fucking Friday morning kickoff for me.
Good luck.
That'll be fun. I'll be up for it. Don't you worry. I'll be up for it. It's just going to be similar delirium to last week. It's in that the kickoff time, but it's a good thing that I think we've got a night game. I think we play St Kilda at home at night in a few weeks' time as well. So we're getting a few Friday.
Great question.
Couple of Friday night games in the next 3 to 4 weeks at home, which is good. So obviously this one being gather around the fans, it's sold out, so the fans are going to get around it. But keep getting around them. Yeah, that's about it.
We got through it.
Yeah, we got through it.
We're alive.
And I feel like we're pretty okay mentally after dissecting our first loss, which is nice. Nothing else to say apart from the fact that it's big weekend overall for Adelaide this week with the gather round again. So get around them. Obviously, the overall experience I think is really important to the hope of Adelaide keeping the gather round beyond.
Yeah, go suss out that little village that they have set up with the zip line at Elder Park, and if you can go suss out as much as you can. I'm only going to Friday night, but it's a pretty good moment in the year, and we want to take full advantage of it while we've got it in SA for sure.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. It's a great initiative by the AFL, and even greater initiative by South Australia getting it in and making it it was an incredibly special weekend last year. And
they've had a full year to prepare this time around too.
Exactly.
So
it'll be
looking forward to it.
Goes. I'm looking forward to all the shows this week. I'm like front bar and all that stuff is always
fun
when it's these special times of things. But like and subscribe. Obviously, get around we've got the YouTube channel now as well, which is it's just the podcast. But I do put the shorts up there, like the minutes or so videos of our Sweeney and Goal of the Week nominations. Those go on YouTube. Any other bits that are decided to clip from the show, they'll get put on YouTube as well. So
Yeah, no erotica
there.
this week.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no erotica. Yeah, if we'd gotten over the line, maybe, but that's what she said.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the socials, I know most people that are probably listening are on the socials, but underscore the Creed on Twitter. It's __ the Creed on Instagram. That's the annoying thing about when someone has decided to make an Instagram account before you.
Yeah.
But most people
When there's a
find it
game
anyway.
like Assassin's Creed and stuff like that out there already. Yeah.
I searched, when I was searching the Creed on YouTube, the amount of Assassin's Creed just 8-year-old videos of someone dissecting one of the Assassin's Creed games, which as a gamer myself, I've played a few of them and enjoy them, but I couldn't believe how many accounts were out there. But yeah, look for the teal instead of the Assassin's Creed logo and you found us. But yeah, beyond that, obviously the merch store as well, the creed.bigcartel.com. The Travis Spoke stuff will be coming down in the next couple of days, so if you want that, get around it. I do have a couple of things in the works that I'll be discussing with Jamie off air at some point soon. So, but you guys will find out about. That's a little while away. I've got some celebration of the premiership stuff that I've got in the works. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. But that's about it, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yep. As
we'll
always.
be here next week.
Hopefully 3-1.
Yeah. Go the power.
Can the fucking pair.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers.